All right, I'm gonna call the meeting to order at 6:30. Oh, there's Katie. Yeah. Thank you all for coming, either virtually or here, and we'll get started. Are there any amendments to the agenda? I have one amendment to make for the agenda, and that is that in our board book, there were no student reports, but they arrived today. So at the report time, I'll read the reports or synthesize it for us.
I think Logan's going to try to zoom in.
Okay, great. Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing no hands raised. We'll move into the next session here, which is the superintendent's report.
Yeah, I'll be efficient. I know we have a busy agenda. Wanted to share that we had 8 of our leadership team members attending the Learning Forward conference held in Boston over 4 days, looking at topics including AI, quality professional development, coaching, administrators, deeper learning, and early education. There were over 3,000 educators, school leaders there from all over the world. It was a great opportunity in our 3rd year attending the Learning Forward conference. Also wanted to recognize that and appreciate the board in that the number for the budget was addressed and voted on prior to the winter break. That's the first time that I am familiar with that happening, so I really appreciate that. And lastly, I think an important milestone that we've worked really hard with the leadership team is to meet our contractual obligation for all 1st and 2nd year educators to be fully evaluated prior to December break. And this is the 1st year that we've been able to fully meet that goal. And so I'm very excited. It's important that our newest teachers in our district have that feedback and have an opportunity to meet with their principals before the observation, after, and during. So really appreciate the effort it took to make sure that all those 1st year and 2nd year evaluations were completed before winter break. We'll have another round before March so that the teachers receive that feedback twice during the school year.
Any comments or questions for Sherry? All right, thank you, Sherry. We also have a number of director reports in our board book. So unless there's a director who wants to say something, I usually just read them ourselves and ask questions directly if we need them. All right, we are going to have a legislative presentation, but he's not coming in until 7 p.m. So when we get to 7 p.m., whatever we're in the middle of, we'll either wrap up quickly or come back to it. So Charlie's up in Montpelier. They had meetings all day to get themselves oriented for the session to start tomorrow. Okay. Actually, Lila, would you like to read your report?
Absolutely. I think
I have a copy of it.
Oh, is it in the report?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
Janet.
sorry.
No, it's right. It says it didn't make it into the board book.
Yeah.
We'll link it afterwards.
Before break, the Woodstock music program performed their holiday jubilee concert featuring both middle school and high school jazz funk bands, middle school concert choir and concert band, high school chorale and symphonic band, as well as truly so many poinsettias. I don't know where they came from. How Mr. Polly pulled it all off is beyond me. He's even managed to get me to stop talking in chorus. It was a huge undertaking with a full program supplemented by many musicians taking on participation in several of the featured groups. The pieces were introduced by enthusiastic volunteers from 7th grade to senior year who spoke to the audience about the challenge of learning a new composition, the joy of performing the composition that's come together as the result of a lot of hard work, the historical significance of the piece, and what music means to them. The audience also participated in singing 2 carols led by the choir and band. 2 parents of band students performed alongside chorus with Miss Glaster on violin and Mr. Hawes on guitar. Miss Bender, who attends every single choir class to play accompaniment, also accompanied each song on piano in concert. It was, as always, so special to see a community come together thanks to a very special music program.
Thank you, Lila. Matt, would you mind reading Logan's reports?
Sure.
Save my throat.
Hoping everyone had a wonderful holiday. I very much enjoyed the time off. I hope to welcome everyone into 2026 and the second half of our school year. A short December at Woodstock brought in change and a new school dynamic. Teams change as the seasons do, and it is evident from the way people act and who they interact with. One of the most drastic changes in our students' lives was the switch to new sports seasons. We are now in the full swing of winter sports, and with it comes new challenges. One of these has been adjusting from a team you knew well to a new team. My experience as a Woodstock athlete has been through the Nordic or cross-country ski team. While my transition from one sport to the other has not been bad in any way, it has been incredibly smooth. It is still a new beginning. Our girls' team is very strong this year with a strong chance of being state title contenders, and the boys aren't looking out of the race yet. We have our home meet on February 4th at Knox Meadow, where it will be one of our hardest meets. The arts of Woodstock have also been busy until the end of 2025. The music department has just had its winter performance on the 16th, which showcased the talent that our school possesses in the arts. We had a large turnout, packing the theater with supportive members of our community. Finally, on the classroom front, many seniors have gotten their early decisions back from colleges. This year's senior class is one of our best and brightest, and it is a gift to watch them succeed. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank our staff here for the great ending to 2025 and look forward to the second half of the year.
Put some slogan on the Zoom. Perfect time.
Did I impersonate Logan?
You did
Well,
really nice.
Is he in yet?
He just.
That's Logan what he thinks of his report.
Hi, Logan. Matt Stout just read your report for you, and he sounded remarkably like you as well.
Thank you. Sorry, I just got home from practice. The roads were terrible.
Yes, we who drove him for that. Anything you want to add to your report?
I don't believe so. I just wanted to focus on we're starting a new sports season, which is very exciting. We have an insane amount of students in athletics, which is amazing, and it's a program that I really enjoy, and most of Woodstock does. And that was about it. That was the core of my thing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now I think Sherry's going to present a sabbatical request by Marcia Bender.
Yes, so there's a link in the board packet to Marcia's application for sabbatical, her request. Per the contract, I convened a committee. Elliot represented the board. Aaron Ciclamani represented administration, and Stephen Stuntz is the president of the union. Her request is around a period of time next year, not the full year, to develop her skills and restorative practices. The committee reviewed her application. The product that she will produce will align with the team, the Yo Theater students, so that her new learning can be brought either through a speak course or through advisory. So we had a really dynamic process. We met multiple times, had conversations with her, and I'm really excited to bring the sabbatical request. We haven't had a sabbatical request, I think, in probably 10 years. So it is, again, another way that we retain teachers and give them an opportunity to step outside of their comfort zone and do something unique, but that is really applicable to the work within the district and the building. So I bring forward with the committee support her request for a sabbatical. She has a plan for coverage during Shul's season. She's selecting pieces for next year. She has some people aligned who are interested in doing those productions while she's away. And so she will be doing coursework in Virginia in studying around restorative practices.
Anybody have a question or?
I just have a question. More generally, is it something that's offered to all full-time teachers?
You have to have worked here for about I think it's 7 years, full-time, in order to apply. There are some expectations in terms of alignment with your work and the work of the district. As well as that you're coming back and you're here for 2 years after. You've done the sabbatical time. So there's a number of expectations. It's not overly prescriptive, but it's still, the committee really takes to heart the proposal and again, how it could possibly affect the community.
And then we hire a replacement
Mhm.
while they're gone.
Yes.
What-
And they are paid partially. And again, it's within the CBA, how much salary and benefits they receive and their position is maintained for when they return.
But I had two questions, please.
Sure.
One, what can I go with her?
Yeah, your family will really.
Number
support-
two is, related to Matt's question, you brought up, so we have a policy around this. Is there a prescription about in terms of timing besides eligibility? Is there besides?
So it's in the contract, the CBA, so that's written into the contract agreement.
I see.
And there's some flexibility within that, so it isn't too tight, but it is, you have to be 7 years, you have to come back for 2 years. It has to be aligned to, it's not a huge part of the contract, but, and Carrie is,
I was a recipient of a sabbatical, which allowed me to expand my license to teach Spanish and including as well French. And it was so well worth my while. I believe you are paid full-time for half a year and half-time, half of your salary if you take a full year off.
mhm. We had an administrator go to Scandinavia to study educational programs. We had a middle school social studies teacher who went to India and worked in an orphanage. So we've had a real diverse opportunity, but not a lot of teachers have taken this opportunity. So it's exciting to see someone step into this and want to do that work.
And how does it work with the budgeting and being able to provide coverage here?
We are required to provide
Yeah,
that month, that opportunity.
Right.
So we will find the resources to do it. So it's not, we can't deny it based on our budget.
Sure.
And you can't, I don't think you get any overlapping. I think it's only one at a time, I
Correct.
think in the budget,
Yes.
right, you
Right.
can't have several people doing it at the same
Right,
time.
right.
Yes.
And there are different options, like the Roland Foundation. Now that's multiple teachers. That doesn't have a prescriptive in terms of number of years you've worked here, but that's another opportunity where teachers are funded to take some professional time for the benefit of programming for students.
Is there a motion to approve the sabbatical request? Corinne, thank you.
Second.
Thank you, John. All in favor, please say aye. Or raise your hand.
I.
Aye.
All right, any nays? Any abstaining? All right. Unanimously passed. Thank you.
I will inform Marcia.
All right, if you did look at the board book ahead of time, you saw there were 2 letters to the legislature. I think, we're probably one of the first schools that sent letters to other districts asking for their support. And I think it's caught on a little bit because I've had a couple more that I didn't pass on, but in this case, I received a letter from the Windsor Southeast Board members asking us to agree to sign on if we so choose to support increasing the spending threshold. Their reasons are that there's controls we don't there's costs we cannot control. And it's just causing more and more people to go over the threshold, including their district. So if you've had the chance to read it, there's a few more details than that, but I think we thought we would have a brief discussion of some questions around supporting that same request to the legislature.
I have one question. What's the downside in doing this?
I don't see one myself, but we would benefit from raising the threshold.
I think if there was a school district that had a letter that maybe asked for something that specific that didn't align with what we wanted, then maybe there'd be downside, right? But I support this for sure. As a finance committee member, we would love the threshold to be increased.
Yeah, it's like, there were so many, numbers in the budget that were out of our control. Like, there was a 5.5% increase, well, no, it was, what was it?
7.5.
It was 7.5.
7.5 in healthcare.
Right, and so we get penalized on that, even though we have no
Tariff
control.
increases. all
And,
those things.
and, yeah,
I think the only downside is, again, is the concern regarding the size of the budgets, what people spend. I know that's what we're hearing.
we get penalized on healthcare going up and supply, and tariffs and inflation.
Correct.
Anyone online want to make a comment on this? All right, would somebody like to make a motion to support this document?
I'll make a motion to support this document.
Is there a second?
One second.
Thank you, Corinne, John and Corinne. They've put everybody's name on, so just a 5-person board, so it's a lot easier than the 18 people on there. I can sign it. I could sign it and say that our board agreed to it, or I don't know if you all want me to put your name on it, so that's a question I have about that.
I make a motion to give Carrie the signing authority for the board.
Okay, let's go to the first motion first.
Oh,
All those in favor of endorsing, increasing the spending threshold, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Are there any abstaining? All right, then we will go forward with that, and Seth, why don't you make that second motion?
I make a motion that Carrie could sign it on behalf of the board.
I second.
Okay, thank you, Seth, and I'm writing these down because sometimes I get asked. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, thank you very much. The second letter came through the Hartford School District. They also put their names on the letter, but they're 5 people. And it was in support of the Winooski School District situation. You may recall that about a month ago, I think it was in December, there were some remarks made by our president that Somali people were garbage. And there's a lot of Somali, what's the word I need? People who've come in, refugees who've come in for a number of years, and live primarily in the Winooski area. And a lot of the children are in the school, and this message was a bit frightening for them to hear that, given the ICE situation that's happened. And also, there was as well a mother and a son who were detained by ICE. They were Somali as well, and so between those kinds of things happening, their board wrote a letter saying, we denounce basically what's going on, and we support our Somali families, and they've done a number of things. They raised a Somali flag for a time. They had some kinds of activities for the students to learn more about the situation in Somali. So they have sent this letter again through, I think, the superintendent's line, and it came to us to consider whether we would like to add our name to denounce the same kinds of actions. If somebody would like to make a motion, we can then talk about it if there's conversation needed.
So moved.
Thank you, Anna.
So would this be the separate letter or would it be
I think,
with them?
I think it's more of a "we stand with Winooski" letter. Yeah.
I'll second.
All right, thank you, John. Any discussion? Anna?
And just for confirmation, I had heard about this, the student and mom who had been detained. Wasn't their superintendent detained for a while also?
Yes.
Last
Received.
summer.
Okay. And I apologize, I haven't actually read the letter. Is this inclusive of all nationalities or specifically to
Yes.
Somalians?
No, it's in a roundabout way, it's inclusive of all, people who are in our country as refugees.
Received. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, since we've already moved it, how would you like to vote on this letter of support? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
Bob and Josh abstaining. Okay. Well, the ayes have it. Thank you all. I will make sure those get moved along tomorrow. All right, the next, not quite 7. The next piece is adopting a resolution of necessity for school building improvements. And I'm not sure who's presenting that. Is that you, Sherry?
No.
I'm not sure myself.
Is this the one for just repairing the septic and the heating
So-
system? So there's two, there's one to like rebuild a whole new school and then there's one.
There's a number of documents that you need to sign this evening. The state requires you to do a resolution of necessity on any capital project. Essentially stating that it's necessary to do this. And so this first resolution of necessity is to make improvements to the wastewater removal system, Woodstock, Union High School, Middle School, the aggregate estimate, cost to be $300,000. And then the second item on this same resolution is replace the 1958 boiler with a estimated cost of $250,000. It goes on further, resolve construction improvements. Are needed, that we're gonna issue general obligation debt for these two projects. And the board will hold a public information meeting on February 26th to present these, which is the night that we present all warrant articles before you vote on March 2nd or 3rd, whatever voting day is. And that's what's basically included in this. And you need to approve this before we get to the warrant and approve the warrant.
Okay, can we have a motion to?
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution for capital repairs. As just described.
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Corinne. Thank you, Matt. Is there any discussion? Bob?
Yeah, in the event that the new build goes forward and we float that bond, can this bond be absorbed into the big bond?
I'm hoping that this bond can get paid before we incur the big bond.
Okay. Then it may be moved.
That's the plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else?
We may not know this, but Charlie, Representative Kimball is advancing legislation to decouple capital and per pupil expenses. We should check to see if this would, if he passes that, if this would eliminate the penalty we're facing on these.
the way that it is written, right, Jim, is based on decoupling for these two.
Not for the, not these
Not
two.
these two.
These two are needed whether he decouples or not.
Right, we have to do these, but we'll still get penalized unless there's retroactive. Something that says something in the legislation that I don't know, you know, just.
It has, the legislation has to be, written in such a way that anything voted on in March or thereafter.
Yeah.
Is decoupled.
And I think that's the intention.
I believe that's their intention, but that's a question that we need to ask and hold his feet to the fire on.
Yeah.
But these need to go forward whether it's decoupled or not.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, have we made a motion? We've made the motion, so, let's take a vote. All those in favor of the resolution of necessity, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, thank you very much. The second item here is to approve the bonds for the septic and the boiler. I don't know if there's anything more that you need to say, Jim? Or anybody else from?
No, it's, as Jim indicated, it's necessary regardless if we get a new build or not, in order to keep those doors open, we're gonna have to do these two projects.
I don't have anything to add, you know, the finance committee and the building and ground committee have both reviewed them. Believe those projects are necessary, and Joe has worked to come up with prices to do that work, and any associated, like with the boiler, is also fuel tanks, so associated costs above and beyond just doing the boiler.
All right, all those in favor of approving the bond for the septic and the boiler, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Sam. Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, that has been approved. Now we will go into the adopt the resolution of necessity for capital construction project. Does anybody want to speak to that?
And this was for the school,
The new build.
Seth.
Do we want
Would,
I think we're-
resolution of necessity,
the resolution of necessity?
is there, are there questions about, this resolution? I haven't seen this. I think there's a resolution of, I think the board would agree that there is a resolution of necessity. Would anyone like to ask a question about that? Or does anybody have a different opinion? Would we like to?
This is a document.
Well, I guess one question I have is, it's kind of like perfunctory, we have to approve this in order to issue the bond, but we could approve this resolution. And then if something were to catch us up later and we decide not to issue the bond.
This doesn't require. us
This,
to issue
just signing this resolution doesn't force our hands, right? This is almost like paperwork. In order to issue the bond.
It's legal paperwork, you don't have to issue the bond, and even if you do the warrant article for the bond. If certain criteria isn't met, you don't need to do the bill.
Any questions before we take a vote?
you need a motion?
Yeah, we need a motion first. Thank you, John.
A second.
Thank you. I think that was Laura, right?
No,
Okay, sorry. All those in favor of the resolution of necessity for the capital construction project, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, the resolution of necessity has passed. All right, now I'm not sure if at this point we want to be approving the bond, or yes, we do.
We wanna
I
discuss it.
Just discuss it.
Do you want to do that now, or is Charlie here?
I haven't seen him come in yet.
I have not.
Okay.
I'll fucking do it.
So. Understanding how significant affordability is for voters and how urgent rebuilding the high school and middle school is for our communities. I shared a detailed recommendation that the rebuild working worked on over the last 4 months that the board could adopt. The plan that we've detailed would reduce costs to voters by approximately 20.5 million. So that's 20.5 million less than what was voted on or what the voters considered in 2024. To make that possible, we have recommended and the board has started to pursue many of these 6 strategies. One, legislation that would eliminate punitive tax penalties on capital projects, the decoupling, which Representative Kimball is sponsoring, and it looks like we have support from other school districts, as well as some of the key leaders of the Senate Education Committee. The project we're recommending be contingent on receiving state and private funding. The goal is that we would recoup 30% of total costs from state and private sources. That's the most significant thing that we could do to lower cost. Number 3, we made some targeted design cuts and approximately about $1 million. This is on top of the $16 million in cuts that were made in 2023-24 before the last vote. We simplified roof lines, facades, reduced window counts. Joe's reusing furniture where possible to further bring that down. Remember, we're battling against rising costs, which are inflation and tariffs, which were calculated to be approximately 13%. So by not voting this, just to be clear, I think this is really illustrative of how time is of the essence here. Since 2024, costs have risen. And this is not me, this is a third-party estimator fund by 13%, which is over $12 million, all close to $13 million in cost increase since the last vote. So we did 6 things. 1, recommending eliminating the punitive penalties, use state and private funding. We made some cuts, approximately $1 million, which I outlined. We're proposing a phased construction approach. So a phase 1 that's designed for the current enrollment plus some modest growth with affordably, easily executable, expandable options to go to 750 or potentially 1,000. We'll come back to that 1,000 question because there's another question from the board there. Working with Jim and the Sherry, looking at some strategic financing to reduce the annual impact to voters. So I think the people who were on the board in 2024 adopted a policy that would keep tax increases for any large capital project capped at 16% per year. It looks like we could obviously honor that policy. This would be a smaller amount. So using those types of tools again, and then, using our bully pulpit to the extent we have one to advocate for broader affordability measures statewide. And there's 2 basic things that we've outlined. One is expanding the homestead property tax exemption, increasing the eligibility. I think the current homestead property tax exemption is around is about 110,000 per family. You know, we think that should be raised for the folks on the bubble, at least to like 160. I think the legislature is already talking about that. And then the other thing was to look at a vacancy tax on underused or high valued homes. This, you know, we talked about a second homeowners tax, and I think we got some feedback. We developed these 6 strategies in about 30 meetings across the district. So some of the feedback we got in some of the places like Plymouth or Killington was, they certainly favored alternative things, but they have a second homeowner population, and a lot of people who own a lot of primary residents own second homes as well, and they rent those out, and they don't want to penalize them for just playing by the rules with the existing system. So they were suggesting kind of tailoring that back. I think the legislature is moving, if you've read the news at all, they're moving on a second homeowners tax, but just I think some of the folks in the district wanted us to take a more measured approach on that issue. So anyway, those are some of the things that we've recommended in terms of cost reduction. We know that this is super urgent because the facility is now, ranked as one of the worst physical buildings in Vermont, with its, value estimated to be over 96% depreciated. We know that the patchwork repairs are going to cost more than reconstruction. We know that there's talk. Act 73 established a funding mechanism for school construction. And we have a pre-approval that would be one of the key criteria for getting that. That pre-approval took us about 7 years and $2 million in private funds to give. So we want to take advantage of that investment and that time and try to leverage state funds if we can. I think Charlie will tell us, who knows what's going to happen. And the news from BPR today was saying, Act 73 is under fire, whether it survives or not, was a question. I don't know I'll defer to our elected representatives, the state level on that, but I think this is the shot that we could take if we want to maximize affordability for residents and rebuild the school. That's what this proposal represents. The other thing that we have to factor in, which Matt reminds us of frequently, is if redistricting does move forward, we could lose local control. Meaning, we're in a much more competitive environment. Instead of 1,000 people, in our students in our district having, 4,000 to 5,000 on who gets those capital dollars and what's prioritized. So those are some of the things that we outlined here.
So Seth, do you think we could take a pause here and let Charlie come in to tell us what he's going to tell us? And then we'll come back to this.
Sure.
Were we at a good place to stop?
Yeah, just ruin my flow. But sure, no, let's do it.
I try not to do that.
Good.
All right, Charlie, welcome to our meeting. And thanks for taking the time to come tonight and talk with us about.
Don't derail my discussion, Charlie.
Your view from Montpelier.
Well, thank you, and I'm sorry I'm late. My name is Charlie Kimball. I'm the state rep representing Woodstock, Reading, and Plymouth. And I am actually in Montpelier, and we start our session tomorrow morning. So it's snowing here. I hope it is also snowing there, but Montpelier seems to get an inordinate amount of snow. I wanted to give you a quick update on where things are. And I'm sorry that I missed the first part of Seth's presentation or comments. But so I'll be introducing legislation's been drafted. Allison Clarkson will be introducing a similar bill in the Senate. And it basically does 2 things. One is it does decouple any kind of construction spending from the calculations of per pupil spending in terms of looking at an excess spending threshold. That's the first thing it does. The second thing the bill does is it makes eligible any kind of construction spending done now and when that construction funding is actually eligible for that funding, as long as it meets the criteria and the intent of what is in Act 73 as it was approved to reestablish state aid education for school construction. There are many things that are currently in play, as I'm sure you are aware. With the recommendation of the redistricting task force to pursue BOCES model, Boards of Cooperative Education Services, but by a different name, the legislature will take that up and look at that. But will also consider what was approved in Act 73, which is looking at those new school districts. And there's no maps to discuss right now. We had planned on having a public forum in December once the recommendations came out with some specific maps. And because there were none, we didn't have that forum. If that does happen, if the legislature goes down that path, I'll ask for a public forum in Woodstock to hear the opinion of various members of the community as to what that means. So the other thing that is very current, as you probably know, and I don't know if you covered this, Sherry, in your opening remarks either, but there's a proposal from the President Pro Tem of the Senate, Senator Philip Baruth from Chittenden County, to freeze all school spending for 2 years at previous year's levels. So from a budgeting process standpoint, that does not work. You are well along in your budget preparations. And if that was a serious proposition, it should have been floated out there probably in May of last year. But that is very much alive as a discussion point. The President Pro Tem of the Senate is not the only one that has input as to what the agenda is in the Senate, but is a very loud voice as leadership there. So that will also be for discussion. There's also a second proposal from a representative from Barry that is to freeze property taxes for 3 years. And doing that would be very interesting because that means that it would require a transfer of funds from other funds that there are also many demands on into the education fund if that in fact goes through. The other reports that have come out in the month of December for the legislature to take up in January, a report from the tax department and on their progress on coming up with a structure to be able to tax different properties at different rates. We've talked about this, being able to charge second homeowners a different rate than primary homeowners. That schedule is long. It's very detailed. I'll be able to report on that more after hearing directly from the tax department in the next few weeks. There's also a report from, you've probably already talked about this, is the school construction financing task force, which was formed. They really came up, they limited their discussions because they didn't have school districts to really evaluate to what to do with existing school debt in the case of any kind of large districts being formed. And did a pretty in-depth analysis as to the existing debt of all the 55 different school districts that have debt right now on their different buildings. And then what happens to that? Does it get assumed by the district that gets created? Does it get left alone? Does the state take it over? And so they had 5 recommendations in their report, but there's nothing specific, and that will also be coming before the legislature in the next few weeks. So that's really a legislative update, is just to say, these are the things that are going to come along. I do have some assurances that the bill on decoupling will be taken up, and there's general agreement that should happen. On the school funding for state aid for schools that get ahead of the availability of school funding, there is not as much sanguine reactions to that. They're afraid of schools jumping ahead and increasing overall school spending. So it's, as you know, a mixed bag right now, and everything is on the table, as many legislative leaders have said. So it's going to be interesting, and I hope to keep you informed as we go along as any developments really occur.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Do any board members have questions? Or comments? Matt?
Hey, Charlie, it's Matt Stout. Has your bill been drafted? Is it something that like either the school superintendent or maybe the chair of the board has read, or is it still not been drafted? The one you're going to introduce on decoupling?
It has been drafted, it's been released for introduction. And since we haven't met yet, it hasn't been introduced yet. I'm happy to share it as soon as it is ready to go. So both Senator Clarkson and I did work with legislative counsel to address those two different things, and to try to make it as simple as possible. And that's always the wrong thing to say when you are introducing any legislation. It's just a simple bill. That's usually the kiss of death, but this is trying to make it fairly easy to understand and then removing that per pupil spending. But I will share, yes.
And I guess behind that question, because it came up in our meeting earlier today, is that if it were to pass into law after the session ends, would it be retroactive to bonds that were passed by the voters this coming March?
Fair question. Yes, it would, because it does not. The effective date treats debts that have, it actually doesn't have an effective date in terms of going backwards, limiting as to what would be eligible then for being removed from the excess spending calculation. So it would include any bonds that get passed now. Yes.
Thank you.
Josh?
Good evening, Charlie. So
Hi,
quick
Josh.
question. Looking at listening to what you just said and hearing that decoupling seems promising, but you didn't seem so confident on the funding for the construction builds. What is the likelihood that's passed in this fiscal year?
Yeah, thank you, Josh. It's really hard. I mean, in Act 73, the school reformation, if you will, bill, there was the foundation formula to pay for ongoing costs of educating students, but there wasn't anything in there about school construction. So this bill assumes in one part that the foundation formula doesn't come into effect because it doesn't change anything that's in existence. So while we're talking about the availability of school funding and looking for dedicated funding sources for school construction, it'll also be in the context of, are we moving ahead with the foundation formula? And if not, what does that look like? So all those discussions will actually come to a head this session. The challenge is finding that funding source, honestly. Act 73 requires that the governor submit a budget that has that in its budget on an annual basis. If it's not in the annual budget, then the legislature can't act on it. So we do have to find a funding source for it, and we don't have that at this point.
Anna?
As I typically start out, Charlie, I wanted to say thank you for your time in general for all the work that you do at the state, but also giving us your last evening before session starts. If following up to Josh's question, this sounds like both the funding and the decoupling are in one piece of legislation. Is that correct? Is there, if it looks like one is promising and the other is not, is there the ability to split those into two pieces of legislation, or are they bonded together? Sorry, I shouldn't use bonded together. Are they coupled? Well, I can't use coupled either. Are they stuck together?
As happens during the legislative session, things move in and out of bills depending on what is going to be moving forward. Often happens a piece of proposed legislation will get moved from its original bill into a different piece of legislation, either because it's appropriate or there's a greater chance of it being approved. And the opposite is true sometimes. Sometimes it gets put into a bill that won't get approved. So there's all different strategies that are employed in the legislative session as to really move things forward. So yes, they can be separated. And even if they both come to the floor at the same time, even at that point, they can be separated and voted on independently.
Thank you. May you be well and rest well.
Well, thanks.
Anybody else?
I just had a comment. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your leadership on the decoupling issue, and thank you for advocating for school construction funds. We really appreciate it. And do you feel like you need any? I guess that's one comment. And thanks. And then, do you feel like you need any guidance from the? I feel like you have good communication with the board about kind of what our goals are for some of these legislative outcomes as this. I mean, I think we should just stay close, right?
Yeah.
As things unfold, so that we can make sure that we weigh in with what the perspective is here, and you have some backing.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'd say that the situation is very fluid, and that we'll have to really stay in touch as to what's happening, both on a publicly stated level and then what is actually happening on the ground. So those sometimes are two different things. So we will have to make sure that we're in touch. I know you have great administration and leadership, so that you're not going to be blindsided at all. The wool's not going to be put over your eyes. This is something that we'll definitely be conversing about. Yep. And
if you ever need anything from the board or from our communities, we have a pretty good network now for getting the letters up.
Yeah. I think that the visit by the Senate was very helpful. So that was a really well done effort, very well coordinated, and they came away very impressed. So congratulations on doing that so well. That was, I think, very impactful.
Good to hear. Thanks to the administration and principals who put it together.
Yeah, it was very impressive. And I have my t-shirt I'm going to wear around the State House, so it'd be great.
Thank you. Especially when Saunders is there, that would be helpful.
I will show Secretary Saunders.
All right, well, thank you, Charlie. You're welcome to stay on and hear Seth go on a bit longer.
I'd like to thank you very much for the time, and just let me know if anything comes up that I can help with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll turn it back over to you, Seth.
Really sounds like the second act. Thanks for that. Okay, so I'm if you have the document that I sent, I'm gonna go into what the details are of the proposal, so that folks are clear and we can answer any questions. I'm starting on the top of page 5. Essentially, what you have in front of you, the budget represents a slightly modified version of the 2024 plan, which was pre-approved by the state. This was slightly modified because we wanted to bring costs down and try to reflect voter sentiment, but we didn't want to sacrifice our pre-approval. So we had a lot of constraints in terms of what we were able to look at. The result, the bottom line is, we're looking at a phased approach. One that the first phase is what we would put in front of voters in March, which is designed for 600 students. The 2 additional phases are contemplated that could be exercised in the future, going up to 750 or potentially 1,000 students. We're going to come back to that 1,000 students question in a second. The square footage, phase 1 is approximately 100. So the proposal in front of you is 158,000 square feet, which is really on par with what we have now. Our building is 139, so how is that on par, Seth? That's 21,000 more. That was 1958. And that building is housed up to 700 students at a time. The reason that we have an increase primarily is because of two things. One, state requirements for an increased classroom size. The current classroom size is around 500 to 700 square feet. The state requirement is 750. So that's upsizing. We got to upsize the classrooms. Two, there's a bunch of things that the school didn't do in 1958 that we do in 2026, and we will do beyond 2026. That's like mental health or other social services, different academic offerings and teaching methods. These were all considered in the plan. And I think anybody who was on board before kind of is pretty familiar with these things. I talked a little bit about the cuts that are the differences between this and the 2024 plan. There's about $1 million in cuts. Flat roofs instead of gable roofs, squaring the facade, which was rounded, reducing the number of windows, reducing the furniture buy. These things were able to shave off $1 million on top of the 16 million made from the initial plan. So it's really like a public school. This is not a this will be something that will be good and sufficient and deliver, but I wouldn't say it's fancy by any means. The other goal was to really address the regional learning needs that in a way that's aligned with Act 73. So you want to talk about the changes that you've made in terms of you consulted Sherry, I'm saying you, Sherry, the superintendent, consulted with the principals and department chairs on minor program updates, ensuring we align with the pre-approval and those
Sure. Sure.
You have a list of them.
Right, so, right at the beginning, we really worked hard in the middle school, high school to define a specific area for the 7th and 8th grade. Reducing that pod by half, we have been able to continue to achieve that goal and have some administrative spaces for the middle school team. We now have a half-time administrator, Tom Emery, in there. He would have an office or whoever is in his position at that time. And while still maintaining another corridor for other programs. So that really good to be able to continue that and move in the programming the way that the middle school team has intended to. We've reconfigured the gym area space compared to the first approved model, working with the PE teachers, a defined middle school area, high school area for daytime programming, as well as nighttime activities. If anybody's been in the middle school gym during a basketball game, it is not safe as a viewer. It has been that way for many years. We now have bleachers and as well as better access to the fields with working with the locker rooms and other spaces. So works really well closely with Jason Carlton to redefine the way the gym is structured. We looked at all the spaces in the building and how we can redefine some of those spaces. For example, we did have a multi-use virtual reality room, which will now be part of the world language program. We've increased theater art space, so we have a set design and performance preparation area. We have worked with the designers to ensure that the band room has 2 stories and for a larger area. And further working with an acoustic engineer to ensure that that's a safe space for students to be who are accessing the music program. Space. And then finally, we did reduce the number of administrative office spaces to achieve these other program additions.
Great, thank you. So did you cover the band room improvements?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I was just logging on at the same time. So you can see copies of the floor plans with the attached designs on page 6, the first floor and the second floor. And then that's right above the budget, which, you can see, and I'll share my screen here.
Do you want to make you a host?
I just asked to share.
Yeah.
Let's see. So with these cuts, the modifications, inflation and tariffs factored in, the total cost of the building is $111 million, 1.9, so almost 112. And the way that we're structuring it is to say, look, let's pursue 30% from the state and private donations. And make voters responsible for 70%, which would represent 78 million. A detailed copy of the budget is here. You can see that the difference between the last proposal and this is about $20 million when it comes to this. Let's see, is this sharing? And you can see this budget in your packet, which details, you know, kind of the initial plan that was developed. The post bond, the VE that came after. So essentially, initially, when the first 2024 proposal came out, it was 116. Then they shaved off 16 million and they went to 99 million. That's what folks voted on. Then if you factor in 13% inflation, you know, plus, you know, minus $1 million in cuts, you end up at $111 million, 0.9. You can see that this column here, K, shows, you know, where we made cuts that are acknowledged in red, where there was inflation acknowledged in black, and there was a couple of minor modifications, so kind of right sizing the scope that we caught, like the project closeout and some of the contingencies that needed to be bumped back up because they had been decreased to a dangerous capacity. So that, you know, where does that end up? That is up at the 111, you know, and you can see the detail here. So I'll stop in a minute to make Corinne, do you have a question? I just want to add a couple of things real quick. Yeah, just add a couple more things on the budget real quick, and then we can talk about the construction schedule. But you know, of other projects around New England in terms of the cost per square foot at the current rates, you can see that we're below those. We were comparing here apples to apples, which means we were looking at high school, middle school combinations, or high schools, you know, on their own. And, you know, our cost per square foot is lower than many of the ones, and, you know, certainly the only other one that's happened in Vermont. So, you know, we have a lower cost per square feet if you look at some of those comparisons. I'll talk more about the construction schedule, and then there's some key board considerations and next steps to go through. But I'll pause before we get there for any questions so far. Do you have a question, Sir Corinne?
Sure, yeah, just on the more of a clarification on the 30% state grant private donations. I'm assuming that that's sort of what your group considered was a, you know, realizable goal, achievable goal, right? Because you know, the state, if we do receive a state grant, it's between 20 and 40, right? Like 20% is the minimum, and then there's another 20% potential depending on certain criteria. Is that what did you look at, kind of, you know, where we might fall within that range, you know, conservatively, and then also look at, you know, estimates of what we could raise for donations to come up with about 30%?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, you know, I think a couple of things. One, what we know so far, I just gotta be very clear, there's not certainty around getting state support. I think we need to go for it. This is the way we go for it, but there's not a guarantee that we're gonna get it. You know, there's not a guarantee that they're gonna fund it. But if they do fund it, we should be there. This is our way of being in the conversation. This is the way of lowering costs to taxpayers. This is the way of the $2 million we've invested in private funds to get a pre-approval. You know, so I think just to be very clear, there's some uncertainty around that, like, you know, whether they find a funding source, what that funding source is it second homeowners, is it other things, you know, those all have to be settled. But what we do know is that the legislature has said, we intend to fund this. The governor said, we intend to fund this. It's tied to Act 73. They're fighting for Act 73. So I want to be there in case they are successful, right? So that's number one. Number two, to your question, like, what is the right range? Our goal is to be aggressive without being irresponsible and unrealistic. The base aid, it says in the AOE guidance, in the task force guidance, is a 20% of the cost of the bond, right?
20% of eligible.
Of the eligible cost, which they have yet to define, right?
Right.
So they need to define that. So there's some uncertainty there. There's bonus incentives for up to 20%. So, like, you know, to Jim's point, we were talking about this earlier today, let's fight for 40%.
Right.
Right? Let's see what we can get. Okay, so that's we're gonna go for that. So what's the number you pick, right? And then you think about private donations. So because it's a two-part question. Last time there were $3.5 million in pledges raised from private donors locally, right? Those were pledges to add on to help reduce cost or add on additional supplies after the bond passed. We've gone back to those people and we believe we can get those donations back on the table. You know, many of them, some of them are so far. We also believe we started to widen that net. So we have a little fundraising committee. And it's been nice going around the district to do these 30 meetings that I did, because you meet people who are like, oh, I know so-and-so, and you should talk to them. And, you know, so I think, you know, 30% based on like what the state rules are saying and what we think we might get into private money is a aggressive without being irresponsible number. And so that's the best I can answer your question, I think, right now. And so if you think about it, like what does that mean? You know, maybe we get 25 million from the state, maybe we get 5 million in local, you know, contributions. That feels like a measured version. Now, in a perfect world, we pass this in March, they decouple, they pass the school construction, and then we get, you know, we apply in July when the program opens, and we get a funding recommendation in October, and we're able to bid this out. You know, that's a perfect world, right? What might happen, you know, we might get decoupling, we might not get the state construction, we might be sitting here in May or June saying, okay, now what do we do, right? Do we wait, you know, another year? Do we try to go forward? And that's a decision. But if we want to go for affordability, this is the aggressive, responsible step, in my opinion, to go for affordability. Because what do we have to lose if we make this contingent on those things? You know, now the challenge is going to be it's complex to communicate this to voters. And there's another challenge, which is what we write in the warrant, what we write on the bond question, but we're going to get to that. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I was gonna ask about the bond language, but we'll get to that as related to this.
I can keep going unless there's other questions, Matt.
I have a bunch, but I'll just focus this on the design. So I did look at it again, and I was involved in the original process, and I was really happy to see the changes to the gym configuration so that we can run, you know, 6 different teams after school. They can all find time to practice and have games, because you've got girls, boys, middle school, high school. It's a zoo right now. So having 2 separate gyms, I think, really helps that. And I like that we accommodated the band teachers' request in terms of like what's safe for acoustics. And then having kind of a separate middle school. I mean, I could go on. It's a great design. It would just be so fantastic for kids to have a building that's sort of safe to be in, and it's not breaking down all the time. And for those of you who know, like my daughter just graduated last year, and when she took her AP exam, the heat went nuts and it was 85 degrees in the room, and they were told they couldn't get up or they would fail their exam because the proctor would consider that cheating if they stood up. I mean, there's just crazy stuff that's happened in this school that barely gets communicated to the public. You know, girls go to use the locker room and there's feces floating on the floor. I mean, there's just stuff that the public should know, and you know, it's well overdue. But there is one thing that I still think we should go for, and we've had a dialogue today about it, and that is to design a track around the football field. And we've been getting a lot of pushback over the years that that would require extra permitting, that you'd have to fill in potentially in the river corridor. And, you know, based on the response I saw from the architect today, my suggestion would be it's not in the current design or in the current funding, but if we could use some of the funds that are already allocated towards permitting to include at least the request to the state, whether we could add more embankment to increase the general area to allow for a track around the football field, and then raise the money from someone in, you know, from donors in the future specific to a track. Just like, hey, this wasn't in the original bond, but now we've got it. We did get the permit for it. If we can do that, and can we ask, you know, for separate money for a track? So I know I'm getting into the weeds, but I do think that would bring some voters into our camp to support it, because it's a huge public amenity. If you could, people can use it for walking, and it's open to the public all the time. And then I looked through the whole value engineering, and I think it's great that we're still gonna have some very high efficient heating systems, and, you know, partially geothermal and all electric. The one little thing that caught my mind is it said removing lockers. And it looked like it would save us $100,000. And so I made some calls and talked to some people, and maybe our student reps can talk about it, but I know a lot of kids don't use them. I heard a stat that like about 25% of kids use them, and it's mostly kids who play sports because they need a place to put their stuff. I just hope that we could be flexible, and I mean, it's only 100,000 of that $112 million budget. If we can fit it in using some of that contingency, could we still have lockers, or is it like we should not have lockers in our school? There's some trend around the country.
I do not see people that don't play sports using lockers, so I would say put all the lockers in the locker rooms. Cause right now we have lockers all along the halls that I don't see anyone using, so we could definitely cut costs there.
And that was kind of where thank you. That was gonna be my question, is if we go with that suggestion to remove lockers in our schools, where are kids gonna put their stuff? And maybe that's the answer.
There's a space built in by recommendation of by Coach Charlton, where there is a room identified just for sports equipment for students to be able to drop off. Right now, it's just throw it down by roommates.
Right, and they're shared, the locker rooms are shared, so you can't give
Right, but there was a
everyone that plays
defined
sports
space
their
right
own.
next, as you enter the gym, if you look at the design.
I did see that room.
Yeah.
Okay,
There are lockers, sorry, and there are lockers in the locker room, so if we could just like expand that and make more lockers there and cut the cost on the lockers in the hallway also, I think look good.
Yeah, Logan also would like to weigh in. Go ahead, Logan.
you're on mute.
You're mute.
You're in the locker.
There we go. Sorry about that. I couldn't unmute. Even to the point about Lila said it that she didn't see people that aren't doing sports using lockers. Most students that do athletes do not use lockers. Most, me included, will either leave them in their cars, or most teachers are very accommodating and will let students leave them in their rooms, and it's just more convenient for us to grab them from a teacher's room than it is to go back and forth to a locker. I do not know a single student that uses a locker, regardless of sports or not.
Okay, that settles it. I guess it's a bygone thing. We used to decorate our lockers, you know, but
You're old, man.
I'm old.
It does seem like having a few or something for somebody who wants to, secure their stuff and doesn't have a car is probably doable.
I know one person that uses a locker. I'm not gonna name names. I'm not gonna write them out, but there is one person.
It also gives more space in the hallways. I mean, if you walking down the Green Mile, it consumes so much space. It changes the feeling of it. I know the high school principal, Dr. Cinquenan, is like, if we're not gonna have enough for every single student, we should not have them.
Yeah, I meant a few like in the athletic area.
Yeah, we really want to make, part of the design too is to make locker rooms unisex, that they're not defined by, this is the boys' locker room versus girls, the showers are designed in a certain way, again, that's a real movement. That bathrooms are single use, so there's a lot of different considerations about the locker rooms and spaces. If you've been in either the boys or girls locker room, has a different ambiance, I will say, and so having multiple individuals of different sexes in those spaces can have many positive benefit. That boys locker room is just.
We have two more comments from
Sorry.
Anna and then Charlie.
I just have a quick thought in the same vein as repurposing furniture if the lockers are not being used currently and it's a cost question. My guess is those Hardy lockers could probably be repurposed. That was it. Thanks.
Charlie?
I got nothing on lockers, although I used mine when I was a student there. But I just wanted to caution the optimism or hope of using any kind of state aid in 2026 or 27. I know that it's a good strategy by reaching for the moon and seeing what you can get, but the way the legislature moves and the timelines and the pressures on the budget, I don't see anything happening in this fiscal year or next fiscal year in terms of financing available to help pay for that state aid for school construction. I just want to make sure that it's not left out there as we can count on this July 1st when this just.
And I think.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, I was just saying that to Corinne, I was saying we can't count on state aid. But with that said, state aid is contemplated by Act 73, there's been talk of this. And the only way to ask for it is to be ready. And so, this is, if voters want affordability, that represents our number one way to provide affordability. And, so we want to pursue that. But we want to go in eyes wide open.
Yeah, and to tell it without it, to be totally honest.
But we want to encourage you to fight for it.
I'm not saying I'm not going to fight for it. I am one of 150. So just to let you know.
Thank you. Lara?
Yeah, so regarding the state aid, the way I'm reading the bond, it says that we won't take out the bond unless the promise of state aid is present. So that means that even if voters pass this thing, if what Charlie is saying is correct, we wouldn't be able to take out the bond for more than 2 years, possibly. And we would have to somehow keep our current building and everything would pretty much stay as is for that amount of time. Because Seth, you were saying something that sounded like, well, we would decide whether to move forward or not. I think we would be constrained by the language of the article to not move forward until the state aid.
There's a lot of things that I like about what I presented to you in this memo. The one thing that I really am not happy with is the language that is drafted in the article currently. And I've been spending my holiday talking to attorneys, trying to change it. And we are going to have another conversation with the attorneys tomorrow. So that's number one, and I'll get to that in a second. But yes, I think we're saying, hey, we want to try to do this contingent on these things. And that's that's what we've talked with voters about. That's what voters would like, have told us that they would like us to try to take a shot at. And so that's how it's currently contemplated, that it's contingent on decoupling and receiving 30%, and state and or private sources. So, the idea is, let's get the first leg of this down. Let's get 78 million down, and then let's go chase the money and see what we can come up with. And that's the best path to going after affordability, but let's set a deadline for that, let's see how good we do. Let's see if we can get let's see if we can get the first leg down. Let's go after the private money. Let's go after the state money, and let's regroup and go from there. I mean, I think that's the only path to really making this affordable. Otherwise, we're taking a building that's gone up 13%, we're cutting $1 million from it, and we're going for $111 million, which is not what the voters asked us for. So that's what I've been trying to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the only chance this article has to pass is if we tell voters that we are going to be contingent on the Act 73 state aid.
Jim.
One thing I want to point out, and Charlie brought this up, is he said, don't count on state building aid in 26 or 27. But the way the funding is designed, we don't sell the actual bond until the building's done. And so the earliest we'd be looking for the state aid would be probably 28. And so if the legislature moves forward in a positive way to fund this effectively and start having funds available on a certain date, we can probably structure our funding in such a manner that we don't need the cash from the state until they make it available. If they don't make it available to 30, it puts us in bind. But if they make it available in 28 and they actually vote to do that, so we have some assurance that it might happen, then we're probably okay.
Corinne?
Yeah, I was gonna ask Charlie about the kind of the sequence of things, but I guess my question is, we have this pre-approval, and does the scenario look like we could get approved for state aid, or we would ideally be approved for state aid even when that aid is not yet seen until a couple years out? And I'm just wondering, like, if that's one of the things that we should be talking about with the legislature, is that inevitably there's gonna be, for any district who's pursuing a large bond like this, there's gonna be a similar timetable, right? Where they want to start planning, want to start doing something, even when, the state might be a couple years from being able to.
And keep in mind, and you and Seth was kind of hinted at this, but not actually discussed it. The state aid is 20%, with no big strings attached, 20% of eligible costs, and then 20% based on a list of qualifications that they haven't written yet. And so, more or less, if they do fund state aid, we're gonna get 20% of the eligible costs. There's another 20%, and our goal is to get at least half of that, but we don't know what the criteria is because they haven't written it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the committee, and I believe it's a committee from, that was created for Act 73, but it could be the AOE needs to write those parameters so that we have some idea what our target is and how we're going to be aggressive and try to get that extra 10% or more.
Matt, did you have a question? And then
Yeah, real quick. So I did see I was gonna make the same comment you were gonna make, was that if we raise money from the state or from private funds, the last time we went through this, we found it was more beneficial to tax rates if we use that money to repay the bond over time. So we wouldn't actually need that state money until we start repaying the bond, which could be 20.
And we've done similar to what Ben did, in order to keep under the threshold of that policy that you as a board adopted 2 or 3 years ago. We've taken and applied the local funds to the bond to keep it below that 16%. And I've got a little work to do in that still, but all but 1 year is below that 16, and the years that are below are enough below that if I shuffle a little bit of money, we will get all of them below it. So we can still meet what you adopted several years ago with that, not to exceed 16%.
Okay, my question to Seth is just, if the warrant language isn't clear, that we wouldn't move forward with taking out the bond unless we get 30% raised from the state and private funds. Like, how do we, and why wouldn't the lawyers allow us to put in the words 30% next to we're gonna raise money from private and state?
No, I disagree with our attorneys on this, I don't have a great answer for you. And Carl, I was gonna ask you to join the next call with the attorneys. Because I have a feeling you may have some more skills than I do in this room. Look, I think what and I'll stop being facetious, the answer that they've given us is that state statute is very prescriptive about what the warrant needs to look like for school construction projects for bonding. Now, how you interpret that state statute, what it says is it lays out, in my view, minimum requirements in terms of what needs to be in there. I have suggested, like we do for any budget, where you say we anticipate expenses of X that will be offset by revenues of Y, that is an appropriate thing to put here. But I think there's worry about there's been some school districts, I'm told, but I haven't seen the examples of this really, who their votes were disqualified, or they weren't eligible for, they had to redo the votes. So that's number one. We don't want to have to redo the vote. Number two, we don't want to get dinged by the state, for some technicality, which is really like probably the thing that resonates the most with me. But, I worry about going out with an offer. Right now, the draft, says it's contingent on us getting, a state and it doesn't say private, which needs to be added, but it says contingent on decoupling and getting grants. I think it needs to say state and or private grants. But it doesn't name the percentage. So to the voters, it just looks like, hey, we're asking for $111 million, and we're hoping to do that. And that's what it essentially says. And so the answer has been like, you have to go educate people. And, I just haven't accepted that point yet.
Okay, so if the lawyers are correct, we absolutely cannot put 30% in, the warrant language could stay as is. We could pass a board policy saying we wouldn't
Yes.
start construction or spend the money, or we wouldn't borrow the money, the big bond, unless we've hit that target.
And you have that policy already on the books.
Well, we have the 60% one. This one is a little bit different.
That's what I suggested in the memo here, is that if we can't get the language fixed with the attorneys to be more representative of what we're proposing here, then we should do some kind of motion like that. And maybe we get some opinion from attorneys too, to understand, about why this would compromise getting state aid. I don't know. I'd like to have a few more days to work on that language.
Josh?
I was just wanting to talk, speaking as to what Jim said, that's exactly what we were trying to avoid, is to go to the voters and say, hey, you could still be on the line for $111 million. because we're gonna build the building and then find out if we get state aid. That's not gonna pass, the same as it didn't pass in 24.
Thank you. Logan?
I know it was mentioned before, but I'm not sure if it was answered or not. But I know a track was mentioned, and being someone on the team and knowing that many of my peers expressed frustration when it was not included in the original plans, I'm just wondering, is it something that's feasible? Is it a possibility, or is it something maybe like 10 years down the road?
Well, I'm just gonna jump in here if that's okay, Matt. We've been told that it's not feasible within our Act 250 permit to add a track right now. Matt and I share his opinion, agree that we should try to find a way to get it included and figure out what kind of approval or exception we need granted. And to get that path outlined right now while we have these folks under contract. And then to use that as a private fundraising tool to complement this plan. So, you know, I think if everybody agrees with what Matt suggested, you know, we already got a list of things that we cut or we would like to have that can go to private donations, you know, that could go on the private fundraising list. You know, and I think the track should be one of those things. So I agree. You know, I think there's some permitting challenges that have to be overcome, and there's some funding challenges, and we should continue to work on that, is my opinion.
Thank you very much.
So if the lawyers won't let you put contingency language in there, why can't you just ask?
Well, sorry,
Why can't you just ask for 78 million and then?
Jim, do you want to kind of give your perspective on all this?
78 million doesn't work, because if we have state aid, when we qualify for state aid, they don't front the money, they pay it out to us over the 20 years of the debt, which means we have to appropriate and spend the full amount of the construction project in order to receive the revenues over the next 20 years. What we could do, and we're not required to borrow the full amount. If we get enough local gifts, we could reduce the amount of the borrowing sum. But we have to be strategic about that, because as we know from before, if you front load $5 million, drop your borrowing about $5 million, but you still may in the early years of your debt exceed the threshold of the policy that you passed. But by taking the local funds in, using them to reduce the first 2 years, which are the most expensive years of a bond, we can then meet the project and the tax rate impact desires of the board and the community.
I mean, the bottom line is that if we don't have the total cost, then we have to have I have argued that we should have the total cost in there, that's gonna be $111 million, and then we expect to receive 30% from state and local sources and get you know, with anticipated revenues of 30% in state and local sources and 70% from local taxpayers. That's what I had proposed, but has been rejected several times so far. And I can't tell you there's a great answer, except for it is not in line with the statute, is the answer that I've gotten. And you might not be eligible for state aid if you do this, you might get dinged, or you might have to run the bond vote again. But it's a big problem, I think.
Yeah.
Or it will become a big challenge, depending on where we land this week. You know, for voter communication.
As Jim suggested this afternoon, we could send out a large postcard explaining very clearly in simple language, this is our plan. If we don't get these funds, there won't be a bond. I mean, that's what people wanna hear. That's the bottom line for many people.
If you as a board at your February meeting adopt a resolution on the line of what Seth just said about the 30%, then you have a resolution, doesn't have to be policy, it's a resolution of the board that says, we're not going forward with this, even if you approve it, if we don't get this, and that
So not put
at
it
least
in the language of
establishes.
that, but have it
I mean, look,
communicated anyway.
there's two things you can do. You can fix the language in the warrant to be more clear. We're gonna try to do that. We're gonna have a call with the attorneys tomorrow. We're gonna keep banging away at this and try to see if we can make any progress. Number two is voter education. If you can't do that, or, you know, is to do a motion, is to do, you know, the mailer, is to do all kinds of stuff. And skywriting, you know, Ray Rice is gonna do that for us from Pittsfield. Just see if he's there, you know.
Who's
You know, but like, then there's the voter education. So like, let's see if we can do both. You know, and see what we come up with, but right now, we haven't been successful, so far.
And we're on a short timeline because it has to be done by the 10th. So we will probably be asking for an emergency meeting simply to vote. We're not prepared to vote yet because we don't have the final language.
Katie has a question.
Sorry, I think that was my question. So I think the motion is to approve the bond for the new school building, but you're saying the language isn't right, so we shouldn't vote on it?
Not today, but we'll probably do it on Thursday night and hoping that we get a quorum.
But I would ask you vote on the other two warrant articles.
Yes.
tonight.
We did, right?
No, you haven't. Not
We've
yet.
just done the
You
resolutions.
did the resolutions.
We
Oh,
approved
we did the
septic,
bond already.
bond and this, we did
Septic
the
and
bond.
boiler?
Oh, yeah, we did septic
We
and
did.
boiler. We did the warrant language, so we just haven't voted on the warrant language for the new build.
Correct.
So to Katie's question, there's other stuff we need to talk about before we get to this question. But I thought that we talked about, and I don't have a strong opinion about this. Voting on, you know, does the board, is this a plan that we should write into a ballot language to vote on later? You know, to get some acknowledgement that we're going in the right direction. Because I don't wanna like spend the week working on this if people are not in line with this plan. So I think we need some affirmation that we're all on this, you know, we have consensus around the direction we're going.
And in order to do that, do we need to address the whole 1,000 people?
Well, so I wanna.
Because that would change the
Yeah.
number.
And so that, yes, I think so. I think we don't have to address it, but we need to address it because it's important. It's a big part of our constituency. So I would be in favor of having some vote tonight that the board would like to pursue this plan and consider a final warrant language later this week to be put on the warning. That would be my request, whether or not you support it or not. So to that point, the next question, if you look on page 8, number 2. Part of this is we want to satisfy our current need in terms of population, and we want to have an expandable option to go to 750 and potentially to 1,000. We can do with the plan that you have in front of you, we can go from 600 to 750 with this current $111 million investment, okay? If we want to have the optionality to ever go to 1,000 students, we would need to raise the budget by $2 million to fund a stronger foundation, increase structural steel, and second-story fireproofing that would make a third floor viable in the future. This was very important to some of the folks who you know, around the district. Particularly, this was an important issue that was raised in Killington as well. I think that my personal opinion on this is that I don't think it's a bad. It's insurance that we have. So that there's one thing we can argue. This is insurance if redistricting happens and we become the hub and we get more.
this is insurance. What Sherry may tell you, and she may tell you that I'm not speaking for her, but Sherry may argue like, hey, look, there's other things that we could do. We could expand the middle school. We could look at other shifting within the facilities here. Another approach might be to, but I think of it as insurance. If we want to be the regional hub for a long period of time to be able to accommodate 1,000 students, if we think that this is going to go to larger school districts, we want to be the place that it happens.
And was that number, I mean, somebody looking at maps and other regional schools that we thought to come up with the
1,000?
I mean, where would we, like where would we be pulling from?
I don't want to name
reach that
names, but I
level?
think there's some considerations in the region that could be consolidated into here.
And I would disagree.
And Sherry might disagree. So like there's some uncertainty around this, but I'm gonna stop talking so that other people can voice their opinion. The other thing that we could do here is we could do this as a separate bond article. As a separate article. You could vote for the 111 million, and then you could say, so that Mountain View's supervisory union has the ability to expand to 1,000 students for its high school and middle school in the future, would you fund an additional 2 million in infrastructure to the bond vote, if that bond vote passes. So you could do a second article like that, leave it up to the voters, which is not a bad thing, because maybe, in one scenario, the school passes, right? But that fails. Redistricting plays out a little bit, the session, and we go back to voters in November to say, hey, actually, we do need to add that 2 million. Like if you put it as one, it's you think of it insurance, and you think, but you realize you might never need to spend that money, or you could make it separate, then you could come back to it later. Anyway, but I think we should try to address.
Could you possibly put down scenarios of what it would cost, if that's 2 million just to have the availability of changing it, but what would it be to add a third floor or whatever versus moving the middle school and having the.
And my other part, we have a footprint that we're stuck in. It's the
Right.
issue with.
What I'm saying is, what's the difference in cost of putting on a third floor versus building another middle school somewhere else?
Yeah, we have some really rough costs around that.
Because the 2 million is just really.
The 2 million is to facilitate, right?
Right, but maybe we should, the next step would be, that'd just be more information.
Ooh, I do have that somewhere. But thoughts, folks?
Well, I wanted to clarify something. You said that the current 112 million allows us to go to 750. I thought it just goes to 600, and that to get to 750, you'd have to do some additions to the building.
That's correct.
Okay.
The infrastructure for the 600 does not would accommodate us going to 750, because you're just basically building an extension.
Yeah, it's expanding the footprint a little bit.
Correct.
But to get to 1,000 students, then you have to go up, and that would incur an additional 2 million on the price tag today.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's not a 2 billion we could ask taxpayers for down the line once we learn that we actually do need to increase.
Before you build, you'd have to.
Can't retrofit.
It's the foundation. It's
Laura's got a hand up. Laura?
My reaction to the idea of an additional bond article for 2 million is to say no. We've already got 2 that we approved of and a third that we're discussing right now. I feel like if we ask 4, people are just going to be like shutting down, sticker shock, just be like, oh my gosh, this thing is too expensive. No on everything. I feel like it would add an unnecessary complication. And so I would vote against that, and I would be more in favor of sending, if we ever get to this hypothetical situation where we need more high school students in our building up to 1,000, that we pursue the idea of moving the middle school out, because who knows when this would happen.
Yeah, I agree that it it's too esoteric to have this as a separate article and talk about voter education. And I also think that for us to be able to make a decision about whether or not we should add it on now or not, we need a lot more information just about like the communities around it, just to be able to evaluate it, and it seems a little late in the game for that. If it were very, I mean, just somebody having a feeling that we might need to do that someday seems a little.
Well, it could be done in
Less
November.
weighty.
It doesn't have to be done in March. It could be
Right,
done.
we'll know more after this session
Yeah.
about redistricting, et cetera. So I would agree, just kind of put the whole thing off. Right now, it's just kind of a very hypothetical situation in my mind.
When Act 73 was written, and they gave examples of the like ideal size high schools. Or was there an example of, like, if you have 6,000 kids in a district, how big a high school would be, what the population of that high school would be?
There are different reports. To me, the idea that I saw was the meeting was 800 students. I think once you exceed 800 in a building, you're really changing the composition of the program. So to me, the idea that threshold to me is 800 as opposed to 1,000. But I have biases and I'm just gonna.
How many students are at CBU?
I'm not sure.
They're the biggest district in the state.
Or even like the new Burlington High School, I mean, how many was that?
As few as
CBU is 1,291.
in the high school, middle school, or the whole district?
Has approximately 1,270 to 1,378 students, 9 through 12.
Okay.
9 through 12, yeah. And I guess what was behind my question is if the intent of Act 73 wasn't to get us all up to schools that big, what was the intent? And if it's around the 800 mark, then you're nearly there with 750.
Well, Seth, carry on.
So about these lockers. Just kidding.
No, I think the question you should be asking the board tonight is if maybe to vote for this concept of only proceeding with the bond if we can find the other 30%, because maybe there's someone on the board tonight who says, no, I think we should just go out and ask for 112 million, and if it passes, then we have a right to build the building. We don't have to. Because this could lead to a scenario where you get 15% from the state and from private funds, and you've tied your hands and you can't build it. Like, so should we have structured the language a little bit differently or not set it at such a high, like should 30% really be the mark? And I think that's the vote maybe you want tonight, because
I mean, in some respects, 20% is more of a, if we're getting, I do think that it's unlikely that it would pass if there weren't some guarantee of state aid. And since the minimum state aid is 20%, it could be set at that level with the expectation, and obviously that we're trying for more, but then your hands are tied. I wouldn't get rid of the contingency altogether, because I think we have to get that passed.
so if that were the number.
Well,
If that were the number, you'd be asking for $89.6 million from the public versus the 78. You'd still be 10 million cheaper than the last bond that only failed by 300 votes.
Yeah, 89 million.
That's what I said, Seth.
I'm just affirming, I like to agree with you.
Anne has a question.
Ian,
Yeah, I just agreed with what Matt was saying about the direction of like what we should be talking about tonight. And I agree with what Karen was saying too, that I I get nervous about the 30% that you could get so close where the state funds 25% and then you're able to get like to 29% with donations or things like that. I think people need to see that there will be a commitment of some other funds. I am concerned about that being necessary to get passage, but I worry that the 30% bar is a little high and that even something like 25%, or I mean, I really think the idea of 20% is good too. So I just want to say that I agree with some of the trepidation about that specific threshold.
thank you. Josh?
I actually like the idea that she just tossed out with 25%. I think that's a happy medium between what we were talking about and the 20% that is guaranteed. I think if we say 25%, I think that's a happy number that we're getting the state to cover a quarter of the cost. And that's a good way to sell, it makes us look like we're trying to do our jobs as well.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I think, to be honest with you, I think if you were in the 89 range, you would be in good shape because at least from Plymouth, everybody was projecting that the inflation costs were going to be so high, we were going to be close to the 99 million, even with the discount. You were there at the meeting, they were worried about that. So I think if we were projecting somewhere in the 89 or less, probably be okay. And so the 20%.
To Josh's point, just to reiterate what Matt says. 25% match. To Corinne's point, the state is saying minimum 20%, okay? We know that we got close to 5% in private last time, so 25% feels, to Josh's point, feels doable. That gets the cost to taxpayers at 83.9. Which is, a significant reduction.
The 99.
That.
And with the private fundraising, if you have that as a goal too, it's like you're more likely to.
But again, right now, the lawyers don't want us to put any number in there. They're just asking for a total 111. So we don't even have these percentages. It's about, like, we're arguing, unless we're able to change the language to what we're arguing about is like, what are we gonna be messaging to voters, and I think I want 30% to be aggressive. I think 25% is also aggressive but more realistic. Especially given what Charlie has said tonight.
But can you ask a bond to be approved, but also have a resolution that you're not going ahead with it unless you get.
We had that in the policy.
Yeah, I mean. Without it
I
being,
think so, yeah.
without it being in the language of the thing, you asked for it, but you have a resolution that you're not going to hit, so we're not gonna ask for it. I mean, even though we.
That this board said the difference is, it's not gonna be the same board. Okay? So we should probably, anybody who comes on the board,
Well-
probably ask that as a litmus test, but.
And that was the question last time. Last
Yeah.
time was the.
Yeah, so we
concern
make a
was-
policy on this.
Yeah, and that's why we made it a policy, and that was the concern, well, a different board, but by having it a policy, it has a leg.
It at least has some staying power.
Right. As much
Can
as
I
you can.
just say that I
Josh,
agree with?
Question.
Can I just say I agree with Seth? I think it has to be in order for us to go to voters. I think it has to be written. If we're saying, oh, we made a policy that just says we're not going to accept it, versus they're actually voting saying they're not going to accept it unless we hit that number. I think that holds us to the fire saying we have to do it. Our policy, like Seth just said, if we have a whole new board,
where's that policy in 10 years or, whatever, I just like the idea of thinking that whatever the policy, whatever we put to the bond needs to have that number in it. That helps voter education. That helps us get our message across.
And that is what Seth's trying to get the lawyers to agree to. So he's
The
put
point
all
is,
his
if
effort
you can't get
into
the
it.
language into the warrant, is there another way to communicate the same thing?
I think we're going for what Josh is saying, and then Elliot is saying, which is what I agree with. We should have a policy or a resolution or whatever we can to show our commitment toward that. And if we vote at a 25, if we proceed with like the idea of communicating a 25% state and private match, that's 15 million less than 2024. 15 million, which is a significant reduction, which allows us to deliver on what people ask for.
So we're ready to have somebody make a motion to make a vote that we promise that we will not go beyond, that we're looking for a 25% match from state funding and donors.
I think, is the motion
To pursue warrant language.
to pursue a bond, to pursue warrant language, that would allow us to pursue this plan, which is a 75-25% mix, 75% of local funding, 25% of state and private funding. That's really.
Lila, did you have a question?
Sorry, I have I don't know how things work, but would we want to keep it a little higher than we wanted, to negotiate with the state? Are we able to negotiate with the state? Is that a consideration?
I think they tell us what they'll give us.
Okay.
Also, there's nothing to negotiate with yet. There's no money yet. So right now, we're just negotiating with ourselves.
Well, I think they'll give us criteria, which is really important. They'll give us, here are the criteria we're looking at, and we have to fight and present that we meet those criteria. But using a baseline, the baseline is 20% is a great start, knowing that no dollar will be left on the table.
Right, and I think in the messaging, we should be clear, we are gonna go for as much money as we get. It's just that we will not proceed if unless we are gonna get 25% in grants or credit.
Laura?
What happens if we vote right now to say we want to put this 25% thing in the bond warrant and the lawyers come back and say, absolutely not, you cannot do this? What happens to our vote then?
Well,
we have to revote.
I think we're saying we're pursuing, there's two separate conversations. One, what mix of funding do we want to pursue? It sounds like there's an emerging consensus of a 75-25% mix, 75% local, 25% state and private match. Okay, that's what I'm hearing, number one. Number two is, what are we communicating with voters and how? We're going to argue to try to get that question as clear as possible in the warrant. But either way, we have strategies to pursue that goal. And we're gonna cross that bridge on Thursday. Which way
we can, for the question for tonight, you can say that you will work to have it in the warrant, or we'll work to have it in a policy, which we can have prepared for, for the 26th, at least for the policy meeting. I mean, it won't get passed. It'll have to still come back here, but at least it can get drafted.
Great.
By then. Which is in 3 weeks.
Well, that might be that's why maybe Josh and others are advocating as a resolution, then you don't have to go through the public process. You can make a vote.
But is a resolution more durable than a policy? I don't know. Is a resolution only as good as the board that's here, where a resolution?
I think a policy is more durable.
Yeah.
I think it's durable, but also is it the right kind of
Well, it's not,
message for this?
it's not as, it also is not the time, you can't pass it in a month. I mean, by our rules, you
Yeah.
have to fix at least 2 to 3 months. So
It could be a resolution that is
that turns into
pursued
policy.
as a policy, correct?
Right.
And we have to just get that out everywhere. We have to send it out multiple ways, multiple meetings, as many times, any person you talk to. Have the message in your hand so you can say, this is what we've resolved as a board. Because, I mean, otherwise, people won't know.
So
Should we have some sort of resolution at our meeting where when we do have the warrant language, if that's Thursday, whatever it is, if we can get at least 25% in there, that's great, but if not, should we have some resolution?
I think
language we could
so.
Pass at
Yeah.
the same time.
Yes, I think we should.
This is the current draft. That everybody
I,
has.
for one, like
So-
it the way it's written. I think it gives us maximum flexibility. Because what if we don't
does.
get 25%, but the cost of construction materials just plummets, and suddenly the whole thing costs less for that reason. I don't want us to be tied to getting to this finish line in a particular way. So I like this article as written.
So you're making a motion, Laura?
but you're
Are
saying
we-
that they're not.
Are we making a motion on the article language, or
No,
are we making a
this-
motion on a
We're not
resolution?
making, I'm just showing this as an example. The language that the lawyers would approve is this, and I think the one thing that's missing from it
Is the percentage?
is, no, well, hold on. There's two things. One, at minimum, number one, provided that the state of Vermont awards the district. I think it needs to say the state of, this needs to say the state of Vermont awards the district in provision, and or private sources grants to offset project costs. Because we need a public and private funding.
Oh, so it's just missing the private source.
Yeah, but so that's
You can't tie the private source to Act 73.
yeah, it has to, we
A
just have to,
separate number.
it would be added like right here somewhere, we'd have to add like private.
But you're not putting any, I mean, it could be $5,000, $5 million, that's not gonna.
Well, but there's two parts to this.
Yeah.
One, this could work right now, according to the lawyers, and I'm assuming we can get private money in here where I have the marker as well.
Yeah.
The suggestion that I was pushing them on was to try to say the 75 and 25%. And they were saying that we can't get that in there. But that is what you were saying, let's accomplish with a resolution or a policy. And retire this now.
I would say that
Katie?
I agree with Laura. I think we should leave it as it is. I think if you add additional conditional nuances, it's a bigger risk that either we can't fulfill it or voters don't understand it and won't vote for it. So I actually like the way it's written. I think it's good for the voters and it's good for the district. I think I like it the way it is.
Can I just make the con to that is that this is not representative of the plan that we're trying to carry forth. That we're trying to say we're cutting costs, we made a more affordable proposal, but we're presenting one that's close to $12 million more. So there's a discrepancy between what we're saying and what we've written. And that's I've been trying to close that discrepancy.
I would disagree with that.
Yeah.
There's not a discrepancy at all between what's written and what you're proposing. There's information that by law has to be in the warrant article. And there's information that you need to present to explain the difference between the 111 million and the total impact for the taxpayers. You've done an amazing job tonight explaining that. We just need to get that message out.
Hey, and is there a place like, I'm trying to think of so there's all the the messaging ahead of time, and then there's the people who show up and this is what they see, and is there somewhere, not in the warrant article, but somewhere that just says, I mean, what is the provision of Act 73? Because somewhere in there, I mean, I don't know exactly what the language is, but is there some verbiage in there that speaks to the 20%,
It's a good idea.
you know, and just have that blurb, you know, because it's like, okay, what are the, you know, provided that the state awards us, you know, a grant.
And
For
on,
Act 73, well,
on
what is that?
on February 26th, in that meeting, you can include that with the warrant
No,
article.
what she,
But on the ballot, you can't put that on the ballot.
Right,
it's a good. That's good.
And the problem is very few people come to that meeting.
right.
So you cannot rely on that method alone. It's gonna be up to the board members to disseminate this information as far and wide as you have the ability to do in your communities. Whether it's going to meetings or, you know, sending it through parent squares, sending it through this, that, and the other.
Well,
front
bringing
page.
it, can you bring it to town, bring a
And you could have,
handout to
Yeah.
town meeting?
Yes.
That kind of thing.
we'd have to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be hard. You know, that's why I'm just fighting to make sure it's on the question, but you know, because the easiest thing is that they read it and it makes sense. You get.
No, I'm good. I'm.
And it gets, this gets very complicated fast, because if you raise 25% of 112 million and then you use it for repayments of the bond, you're actually paying back interest and principal, so you're not really. You're not reducing the 112 by the 25%, so. I mean, how we say this has to be very clear. We're gonna raise at least 25% of this upfront amount and use that to repay. The bond in the initial
Well-
years.
Bob has an idea from Sunny Pomfret.
Bob,
I think we should leave the language the way it is, and here's why. We should definitely keep putting the word out of the intent to get the state to pony up the 25% along with private funding. But the alternative is a non-starter. If this had been voted 2 years ago, the school would have been well underway for $12 million less than what's on the table right now. If this doesn't pass at $111,950,000, we're rolling the dice. And we should tell the people who are voting on this exactly that. And it's not just a matter of spending 250,000 here, 300,000 there, you know, maybe closing the gym when the roof caves in or something. There are some things wrong with that school that could shut it down. And then the game's over. We send our kids somewhere else, or we build tents, and it's going to end up in the long run costing a lot more than $112 million. I think it's time to, you know what, or get off the pot here. Thank you.
But if you were to just look at the language of that, you would say it's a trick. Like you would say,
Totally.
you would say, okay, you're gonna get 5 million or whatever you say, you're still gonna ask me for 111 million. So how do you communicate that? And for nobody, I hate to say it, but you can have all the other language communication attempts. People come in there just looking at the language.
You're doing the choir.
Yeah.
Well, we might not resolve this tonight because there's still an open question for the lawyers about whether we could possibly get in a percentage into the warrant article.
Hey, look, I've been told no by 2 lawyers, but,
2 different firms,
2 different firms,
not just 2 different lawyers.
but, you know, that doesn't, that's.
So there's a good chance we can't change the warrant article and we could pass it on Thursday as written. But we still have the ability as a board to pass a resolution that we wouldn't go forward unless we hit a certain percentage. And there's been really good discussion tonight. Some don't want to tie it at all to a percentage. Like I think Bob maybe was just making the case that we don't make it contingent on that. And others have said 20%, others said 25. So we can have that discussion down the road. And we still vote on that later if the warrant
It's just gonna
I
be.
just think we have to be really clear that we are intending to find at least 25% of the costs, and we're committed to that. And that we need the public's help to spread that word and not have misunderstandings, because there are people who don't go to any meetings, they don't read anything, they don't get the listservs. So, as community members, we have to make sure as many people as we can understand what the intent is. And I think it needs to be written in a way that people can read it and say, this is the school board's intent.
Yeah, the other thing they still need is, even with a 78 or 111, they need to know what it's gonna do to their taxes in the next couple of years. Like, what does that even mean? The way Ben had that thing figured out, we need to have that spreadsheet working again.
Jim fired up the tax calculator.
It's working.
Okay, that's the other part of it.
Yeah.
The 111 is just another abstract
Because
thing.
there are people who want that.
Yeah, they need
Some
to know
people-
what
some
is their
people
bottom
don't,
line
just wanna know.
gonna be. It's right.
I mean, I think everybody wants that. I agree with you. I think everybody wants
Yeah.
that. You have to have that in order to know what the impact is. And I think we need to be able to show that what the impact would be at the 111, what the impact will be because we put that 25% match in there. This is what the actual impact will be. That's showing the community to trust the board and to trust our process.
Anna has been
Yeah.
patiently waiting.
Yes,
Sorry.
I was over here trying to think of a different approach to the warrant, given that it sounds like maybe are now leaning towards not having a percentage. Are we able to put verbiage in there that says we're asking for approval for a bond for $111 million, and then say something like not to exceed 83 million from taxpayer income?
Well, that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I tried that. So I've been told no.
Oh, okay,
No,
received. I just
because
wanted to throw that out in case
that's
it
on principle.
had not been entertained.
You guys, I would love to loop you in on these emails with the attorneys that I did all over Christmas and New Year's, Cause
And then they call me and say, who is that?
why is that guy, tell that guy to stop emailing. is
Seth,
what they said.
my similar gratitude for Representative Kimball goes to you in the Herculean effort that you're putting out right now, trying to lead this pack. Thank you.
Thank you, but I like your idea that we need to ask about it, because reference the statute, reference the rulemaking, because in accordance with Act 73, which says it will fund a minimum of 20%.
Yeah, because it says that right there, so if people can see what that means, then they, I don't know. Right. And in fact, and then the language of the warrant. I'm questioning whether we should, yes, we're pursuing private funding as well, but I'm not sure that necessarily has to be in the warrant.
The reason that I wanted it in the warrant was to have all options available. Because I didn't want to be disqualified, because originally we were writing it to say it's contingent on receiving 25% of state and private funding. Like, I didn't want to be tied to a certain number of state and or private, the flexibility in case state comes lower to raise more privately. Because look, the truth is, if we passed an $80 million bond, we're gonna have a hell of a lot better time fundraising privately. If we got a $20 million match from the state, we're gonna be able to close that door on the private.
Yeah.
So here's the question you could ask the lawyers. Can a warrant language have a link?
No, it's paper.
Right.
You read going and vote and you read on.
Well, but essentially it does, if it's quoting a law or a statute, it's essentially like a link, except you're providing that information of what that is.
A quotation.
We could do it in
Can it
our,
have a quotation?
in our information, but it's not gonna be.
Quoting
written
act-
out.
No. Isn't the statute in there?
Right, but it's not a live plane.
It's clarification of what it is, though. So just ask the lawyers.
a bond resolution as written as it is now, but then with a quote, a colon, and then a quotation of the.
An asterisk, by the way, that little thing really means.
No.
Yeah, footnote.
State construction aid under Act 73 is contemplated to be 20% of eligible cost. Up to 40%.
I mean, why put that in there if you're providing information with people? People are not looking it up unless you.
How about
Specify it.
handing out a little flyer that says just that at the polls?
I think that's electioneering.
Well, all will be probably decided tomorrow, I guess.
So would the board like to, so is there a motion to support pursuing a 75-25% funding model that will develop language for the vote board could vote on later this week?
So
Is that the
moved.
motion? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there a second? I need
I'll
a
second
second.
that.
All right, thank you, Anna and Corinne. Okay, all those in favor of supporting what he said, say aye. Or
Aye.
any opposed? Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we're looking at a 6 o'clock or 6:30 meeting on Thursday, most likely, so that we can get this done. And then, Jim, do you need signatures on Friday? How
So-
does that work?
Several things need to happen. You need to go back and do 5D on your agenda and approve Articles 3 and 4. Bond Articles 3 and 4. Then you cannot approve the warning or the warning for the annual meeting or the information meeting because you just changed it.
Okay, I think we did 5D
You approved the
necessity, but
necessity, you did not
That's
approve
what we
the
did.
wording on the bonds. Because the necessity does not have the exact wording of the bonds in
okay, well, I just thought we did that. I don't remember skipping it. But is Marlena still on there?
Yes, I am. I was just looking through my notes. No, you know what? You're right, because I have a note here, not sure who motioned, but yet I also have a note that it passed. Jim and Joe spoke to it. It was at 6:56. So
But
I was
that
gonna,
was
gonna review. I just
that
thought
was
I
the
missed it. I was
necessity
gonna review.
resolution, not the bond language.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
well,
actually
let's-
think I think you're right, Jim.
All right, so then let's have a motion to approve the bonds for the septic and the boiler.
Yeah, Articles 3 and Article 4.
So moved.
Thank you, John.
I'll second.
Thank you, Corinne. All right, all those in favor of approving the bonds for septic and boiler, please say aye.
Aye. Again.
And any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we've at least done that. So moving on,
So you
we can't do,
table 5F and 5G until Thursday.
okay,
Because you
Right.
can't do either one of those until you have whatever language you're going to vote on Thursday.
okay,
Okay.
very good. All right, I will send it out a reminder to all and those who weren't able to be here tonight to remind you of that meeting. Is there a preference of 6 or 6:30?
6:30 for my family, if possible.
6:30, please.
Okay, we'll do it then. Okay. Then we are now down to the committee updates. Does finance have a report?
We do not meet since December 8th.
Okay, policy has a report.
Yep, we have 3 policies to talk about. For a first reading, we have an update on employee unlawful harassment. We've had a policy visit update, and actually it just has some more explicit language on and definitions. So unless there are questions about it, I would like to request a motion to have a second reading in February. Passage towards a second reading.
So moved.
Thank you, John.
Second.
Thank you, Anna. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you.
Okay, and for second reading, I would like to combine these just in terms of logistics. So we already talked about these. 820 is just defining when we have meetings, et cetera. We've already talked about this. So this one would be to put for adoption in February, and the next one is a notice of non-discrimination. And that update is just including a phrase about immigration status. So I wanted both of them put forward for adoption, an adoption vote in February.
So moved.
Thank you, John.
Second.
Thank you, Corinne. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Great.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you, Elliot. Buildings and grounds, do you have an update for us?
Is Joe still in the room by chance?
I am.
Joe's
Awesome.
still here.
Joe, would you mind just giving us a quick update on the, I know we last met on the 15th, and you had a contractor coming out just to tell us about the feasibility of opening the pipes to the locker rooms. Did you have an update you just want to share with the group?
The feasibility of what?
Septic system coming out of the locker.
Oh, yes, okay. Yeah, so we had another failure of waste lines at the high school. And we wound up shutting down maybe 20% of the building. What we had is the waste lines exiting the building here where the greenhouses are, where they come out. They were full of roots because they're clay pipes and they're joined together with mortar, and they've been underground for 70 years. So we wound up trying to remove them mechanically. We were unable to do that because they're clay pipes and we were worried about destroying them, and if we lost them, we'd be completely out. So over the break, we came in, we had a company here for a couple days trying to water jet, basically clear the roots by high pressure water. We were able to remove enough of the root system to get the pipe to flow again. So our current options are either A, have these guys come in probably yearly to keep the drains open, or again, look at another bond to replace the drains leading to the lift station, you know, the ones that are clogged. I assume a lot of this is dependent on March, what happens with the vote, what avenue to take. But we were able to get them open, and today we opened all the bathrooms and everything else in there, so we'll monitor them over the next few weeks, and hopefully we won't have any more issues. But it did back up probably a week before we left for break.
The Muskoma girls game.
Muskoma's girls game. No, actually it was Twin Fields game.
Springfield? I thought it was Muskoma girls trying to get into the locker room and it was.
Yeah, no, it was Twinfield. It backed up into the boys' locker room, it backed up into the custodial closet, it backed up into the steam tunnels. It was catastrophic, really was. And again, we're just gonna encounter these things time and time again. And I can assure you one day I'm gonna get to a point where there's not gonna be a good answer. But we're open. The door's open, heat's
That
on.
heat's on, as long as they keep putting the oil in.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, I want to thank you for all that you've done and are doing, and your proactive way of trying to get ahead of these things.
Yeah, just duct tape and balance at this point.
There's a lot of things I could say, but I don't like to use those words in public. So thank you for everything. Is that it, Katie?
That is it. We also reviewed capital projects for 2027. So more to come on that shortly.
Okay, thank you. Negotiations, hiring, and retention,
No,
nada. And we've had our working group update, I think, for this meeting. So we need to approve 2 sets of minutes from December 1 and December 15. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
so moved.
Thank you, John.
So maybe it's linked in there. The link goes to the board book and not the minutes on the December 1st. Ones.
I know they're posted because I looked at
So
them.
you looked, okay.
They're on the website. I do know that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I need a second here, people.
Anna is seconding.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, at this time, we do have an opportunity for public comment. I would ask that if you would like to make a public comment, you would say your name and which town you're representing, as well as knowing that it's a 2-minute time for you to speak. Would anyone like to speak? All right, seeing none, we're at our reflection. What did we do well? What could we do better? Anna.
Sharing my gratitude with everyone. Thanks for working through this mud. I think there were some really hard and great conversations today. This is where the rubber meets the road. So I really appreciate everyone showing up and having cordial discussions with each other this evening. Thank you.
Second that. These are hard conversations with the greatest tone, having our students reps here late night. Thank you guys. Again, your input is valued and the quality of the conversation is always appreciated.
And I just want to thank Seth for all that he's been doing and has done. He and I spend a fair amount of time together, whether it's on the phone or in person. And he's a bulldog. He goes after it, and I really appreciate that. He is. Yeah, I don't mean that in a bad way. He's fearless, and he's had a lot of conversations that many of us might not like to start, and he's done a lot. I think it's important for us to know that over the next 2 months, we're going to be calling on all of the board members to step up in ways we normally don't have to, and that means attending meetings, getting the word out, and sometimes having uncomfortable conversations. So thanks, everybody. And is there anybody else who would like to speak? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. I'll second.
Okay.
There's a lot of seconds there.
Curran and I got it there. We are adjourned. Oh, no, all in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining?